Your greatest enemy is not outside of you. It's not the people who doubt you, the obstacles in your path, or the challenges life throws at you. It's the anger that blinds your judgment, the fear that shrinks your potential, the anxiety that steals your peace, and the impulses that push you toward decisions you'll later regret. Most people spend their lives trying to control the world while remaining slaves to their own emotions. Stoicism teaches a brutal truth. If you cannot govern your inner world, your outer world will eventually collapse, because emotions are powerful servants but terrible masters. The moment they begin making your decisions, they begin shaping your destiny. Master them, and you become calm in chaos, clear under pressure, and powerful in any situation. Fail to master them, and they will quietly destroy everything you are trying to build. And the most terrifying part, you won't even see it happening. It won't come as one catastrophic moment. It will come slowly, one bad reaction at a time, one moment of weakness that you justified, one relationship damaged because you couldn't hold your tongue, one opportunity lost because fear spoke louder than courage, one version of yourself buried quietly under years of uncontrolled feelings, dressed up as personality. People will call it just who you are, but deep down, you will know that wasn't who you are. That was what your emotions made you do. You have watched people around you self-destruct, not because life was harder for them, not because they were less intelligent or less talented, but because something inside them was ungoverned. Rage that erupted in the wrong rooms, insecurity that killed the right relationships, jealousy that twisted their perception until they couldn't see clearly anymore, pain that was never processed, so it was projected. You have watched all of this, and if you are being completely honest with yourself right now, you have lived some version of it too. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the most powerful empire on earth, wrote these words alone in his private journal, not for history, not for legacy, but as a man fighting himself every single day. The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are. This was not philosophy for him. This was survival. Because even a man with absolute power over the world knew that the real battle was never outside the palace walls. It was inside his own mind, at 3 in the morning, when no one was watching. That is where your real battle lives too. Not in the argument you had last week, not in the person who wronged you, not in the situation that feels impossible right now. The battle lives in the space between what happens to you and how you respond to it. That space is everything. That space is your freedom. That space is where your character is either built or destroyed, one moment at a time. This is not a video about suppressing your emotions or pretending life doesn't hurt. This is about something far more powerful. This is about becoming the kind of person whose emotions serve them rather than sentence them. 5 points, 5 truths, and every single one of them will land somewhere real inside you because you have already lived them. Type in the comments, "I control my mind." Now, let's get into it. Point 1. Every uncontrolled emotion leaves a scar that compounds over time. Nobody talks about the accumulation. Everyone talks about the big explosions, the dramatic breakdowns, the visible destruction. But the real damage emotions do is quiet, invisible. It builds the way debt builds when you ignore it. Slowly at first, then all at once. Every time you reacted with anger when silence would have protected you, something shifted in how that person sees you. They may have never said it out loud, but they filed it away. And people collect evidence. They collect evidence about who you really are when pressure arrives. And once that file gets thick enough, no amount of good days erases it. You became predictable to them in the worst possible way, not as someone reliable, as someone explosive, as someone they learned to walk carefully around. Every time you let anxiety make your decisions, you shrank your own world a little smaller. You skipped the opportunity because the fear felt too loud. You stayed in the situation that was killing you because the unknown felt worse than the familiar pain. You said yes when every cell in your body was screaming no because you were terrified of what saying no would cost you. And slowly, without realizing it, you built a life shaped entirely by what your fear was willing to tolerate, not by what you actually wanted. Seneca wrote something that cuts straight through the noise. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. But here is what people miss about that quote. The suffering in imagination is still real suffering. It still floods your nervous system. It still poisons your decisions. It still costs you years of your life lived in rehearsal for disasters that mostly never come. The scar is not always visible on your skin. Sometimes the scar is the version of yourself you stopped believing in. Sometimes the scar is the dream you quietly abandoned because one failure felt like a verdict. Sometimes the scar is the emotional wall you built so high that even the people who genuinely love you cannot reach the real you anymore. Emotions that are never mastered do not disappear. They migrate. They show up as chronic tension in your body, as patterns in your relationships that repeat no matter who the other person is, as a ceiling you keep hitting in your own life without understanding why. The wound changes its costume, but it keeps showing up until you deal with it directly. Point 2. The people who provoke you are revealing what you haven't healed. Pay close attention to what makes you lose control, not what annoys you mildly, what detonates you, what turns a rational, functioning human being into someone unrecognizable in seconds, because that specific trigger is not about the person in front of you. It never was. They just had the exact key that unlocks the exact wound you have been carrying so long you forgot it was there. When someone dismisses you and you feel a rage that seems disproportionate to the moment, that is not really about them. That is about every room in your past where you were dismissed and had no voice. When someone pulls away emotionally and it sends you into a spiral of anxiety and desperate behavior, that is not really about this relationship. That is the ghost of abandonment that taught you love was conditional and could be revoked without warning. When someone criticizes your work and you feel your entire self-worth collapse, that is not sensitivity. That is an old story about not being enough that got written before you were old enough to question it. This is one of the most confronting realities of human psychology. Your emotional reactions are a map. They show you exactly where you are still unhealed. The louder the reaction, the deeper the wound. Epictetus, who spent years as a literal slave before becoming one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, understood something most free people never grasp. No man is free who is not master of himself. He wasn't talking about physical chains. He was talking about the invisible ones, the ones forged in childhood bedrooms, in classrooms where you were humiliated, in relationships where you learned that being yourself was dangerous. The person who triggered you this week did not create your wound. They simply illuminated it. And that is actually a gift, as brutal as it feels in the moment, because you cannot heal what you refuse to see. You cannot address an infection you keep covering with a bandage and calling strength. Real strength is not the absence of being triggered. Real strength is the willingness to look at what got triggered and ask the harder question, not, why did they do that to me, but why did that go so deep in me? That shift in question changes everything because it moves the power from them back to you. Point 3. Silence is not weakness. It is the most lethal form of self-mastery. There is a version of you that the world never gets to see. The version that swallowed the words that would have ended the relationship permanently. The version that walked away from the argument instead of delivering the final blow. The version that sat with pain in complete silence instead of making it everyone else's problem. That version of you is not weak. That version of you is operating at a level most human beings will never reach in their entire lives. But somewhere along the way, silence got mislabeled. Society taught you that the loudest person wins, that expressing every emotion the moment you feel it is authenticity, that if you don't fight back immediately, you are a doormat. So you started performing your emotions instead of governing them. You started reacting in real time to protect an image rather than responding with intention to protect your future. Watch what happens in any high-pressure situation. The person who raises their voice first has already surrendered their position. The person who needs to explain themselves the most is already losing the argument. The person who cannot sit in discomfort without filling the silence is already being controlled by something they don't understand. Noise is almost always a symptom of inner disorder, and calm is almost always a symptom of inner command. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that most people read and immediately forget because it doesn't feel dramatic enough. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. Read that again slowly. That is not passivity. That is surgical emotional control. That is a man so secure in himself that he has zero need to defend his ego at the expense of his growth. Most people would rather be right than be free. He chose freedom every single time. Silence in the face of provocation is not you losing. It is you refusing to play a game designed to diminish you. When someone throws chaos at you and you respond with absolute stillness, you don't just win that moment. You completely rewrite the dynamic. You become someone they cannot read, cannot predict, cannot manipulate. And that terrifies people who rely on your reaction to feel powerful. The most dangerous thing you can become in this world is someone who has nothing to prove and complete control over when they speak. That silence carries more weight than any argument you could ever win. Point 4. You will never outperform the emotional identity you secretly hold about yourself. Here is something that will sit with you long after this video ends. Every ceiling you have hit in your life, every pattern that keeps repeating, every version of success you keep reaching for, but somehow never fully grasping. Almost none of it is about strategy, skill, or circumstance. Almost all of it traces back to one thing: the emotional story you carry about who you fundamentally are and what you fundamentally deserve. You can have the right plan, you can have the right connections, you can be in the right room at the right moment, but if somewhere underneath all of that ambition there is a voice, quiet, ancient, deeply familiar, that says you are not the kind of person who gets to have this, you will find a way to prove that voice right. Not consciously, not deliberately, but emotionally, your behavior will drift back toward the identity it knows. Because the human nervous system is not designed to pursue success. It is designed to confirm what it already believes. This is why people win the lottery and lose everything within years. This is why someone leaves one toxic relationship and walks directly into an identical one with a different face. This is why you can read every self-improvement book ever written and still return to the same emotional patterns by Tuesday morning. Information alone does not change behavior. Only identity changes behavior. And identity lives in the emotional body, not the intellectual mind. Stoic philosophy addresses this with a clarity that modern psychology is only now beginning to catch up with. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, built his entire teaching on one foundation: man conquers the world by conquering himself. Not by acquiring more. Not by becoming more impressive to the outside world. By going inward and doing the work that most people spend their whole lives successfully avoiding. You have to stop negotiating with the version of yourself that was built by your worst experiences. That version was formed in survival mode. It was never meant to be permanent. It was a temporary structure built in an emergency. And you have been living in it like it is a home. The day you decide that your emotional identity is not a life sentence but a starting point, everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you stop being your own ceiling. Point 5. The person who masters their emotions doesn't just survive life. They become untouchable by it. There is a specific kind of person you have encountered at least once in your life. Maybe you admired them from a distance. Maybe they intimidated you without trying. Maybe you couldn't fully explain why their presence felt different from everyone else in the room. They weren't necessarily the loudest. They weren't performing confidence or broadcasting their strength. But something about them was immovable. Something about them communicated without a single word that they had already been through the fire and come out the other side with something most people never find. That quality has a name. It is not luck. It is not genetics. It is not privilege or circumstance. It is what happens to a human being who has done the long, unglamorous, completely invisible work of mastering their own emotional world. And the reason they feel untouchable is because they genuinely are. Not because life stops hitting them, but because they stop being destroyed by the hits. Life does not get easier. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. Loss still arrives. Betrayal still happens. Plans still collapse at the worst possible moment. People you love will disappoint you in ways you never anticipated. Circumstances will challenge everything you thought you had figured out. The difference between the person who gets buried by all of that and the person who walks through it with their soul intact is not what happened to them. It is the relationship they have built with their own internal world. When you master your emotions, you stop making permanent decisions based on temporary states. You stop burning relationships to the ground during moments of pain that will pass. You stop abandoning your own goals because one season felt impossible. You develop something that cannot be bought, cannot be borrowed, and cannot be faked. The ability to remain yourself under pressure. And that ability becomes the foundation for everything worth building in your life. Stoicism does not ask you to become emotionless. That is the greatest misunderstanding of this philosophy. Marcus Aurelius grieved deeply. Seneca wrote with raw vulnerability about fear and mortality. Epictetus carried the weight of extraordinary suffering. They were not statues. They were human beings who felt everything and chose, deliberately and repeatedly, not to be governed by what they felt. That distinction is the entire game. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius wrote that not as a motivational line, but as a direct command to himself. Stop theorizing about the person you want to become. Stop watching videos and reading quotes and feeling temporarily inspired before returning to the same patterns Monday morning. The emotion you feel watching this right now, that recognition, that stirring in your chest that says this is real and this applies to me, that feeling is the beginning. But only if you do something with it. Because inspiration that doesn't move your feet is just entertainment. And you didn't come here to be entertained. You came here because something in you already knows that the life waiting for you on the other side of emotional mastery is worth every uncomfortable moment of getting there. The untouchable person you have always admired is not a different species. They are simply a further version of the journey you're standing at the beginning of right now. Everything in your life, your relationships, your career, your peace, your legacy, will ultimately be shaped not by what happened to you, but by what you chose to do with what happened inside you. That is the Stoic truth that cuts deeper than any motivational speech ever could. Because it places full responsibility exactly where it belongs, not on the world, on you. You have spent years, maybe your entire life, waiting for external circumstances to change so you could finally feel differently. Waiting for people to treat you better so you could stop feeling worthless. Waiting for life to become safer so you could stop feeling afraid. Waiting for success to arrive so you could finally feel enough. But the Stoics understood something about that waiting that nobody wants to hear. The feeling was never going to come from the outside. It was always an inside job. It has always been an inside job. The 5 truths in this video are not theory. They are a mirror held up to patterns you have already lived. The scar that compounds silently. The trigger that reveals the unhealed wound. The silence that is actually supreme power. The emotional identity that becomes your invisible ceiling. And the untouchable human being waiting on the other side of this work. All 5 of those are already inside your story. The only question now is whether you are willing to rewrite the next chapter. Mastering your emotions will not make you perfect. It will make you free. And in a world full of people being controlled by feelings they never examined, a free human being is the most powerful thing that exists. Start today, not tomorrow, not when conditions improve. Today, in this moment, with exactly what you have. Because the war was never out there. It was always in here. And now, you know how to win it. Type in the comments, I master myself.